Hi, Matt.
Hi, Baruch. How are you?
Hey, welcome back. Okay,
Welcome back. How is Israel?
Baruch Hashem. Very energetic. A
I
lot
can imagine.
a lot of light. But I'm glad to be back.
I went to a thing at Park East, a little group at Park East, and I ran into a classmate of mine from Yavne,
Uh-huh.
and he's a shrink now, practicing in New York, Chaim Grutziki, and he specializes in addiction. And his office is 5 blocks away from one of my two apartments in the city. And
Uh, okay, here we are. Daf Kuf Yud. We're up to the almost two blot left to Masechta Kesubos. Here we are in Daf Kuf Yud. So the commissioner starts off a case like this. And we're talking about Admoin and Chanan and the Chachamim. So listen to this case. Hamoitzi es shtar choiv al chavera. Somebody pulls out and says to his friend, "You owe me money." So suppose Reuven says to Shimon, "You owe me money." So fine, Shimon owes him money. Now it comes time to pay, but then Shimon said that I bought a field from you during I just bought a field from you. So now that's very strange. The guy owes him money, and instead of collecting the debt, he actually sold the person that he loaned the money a field. So that brings into question whether the loan was actually a real loan, or did it take place, or was it paid. So Admin says, Yochel hu she Omer, the guy who like say Shimon, you claim that he owes you money. Reuven claims that Shimon owes him money because he lent him money. Shimon could respond and say, if it's true that I still owed you money, you should have taken the money that I paid you for this field and keep it as payment for the loan and not give me the field. I first, you pay back your loan and then we could talk about other transactions. And the fact that you sold me your field proves that the loan was either paid up, I lost my receipt, or you returned me the loan document and I just lost it and you found it and you're trying to collect again. So therefore, we don't believe that Shimon still owes Reuven money. The Chachamim says no. Think about it. The guy that sold Reuven, who sold Shimon a field, even though Shimon owed him money, he was a shrewdy. Why? He sold him a field. Why? Because now that Shimon has a field, now Reuven could foreclose on that field. So not only he got his money back, but now Shimon owns a piece of property, and Shimon still owes Reuven money. So now Reuven will foreclose on that property in exchange for the loan. So you got everything. So the loan is still valid. So the Gemara asks a question, my time of the Rabbanan. What's the reason of Rabbanan? Shapika Adman. If you on the surface, Adman seems more correct. You don't enter into another transaction with somebody that owes you money. If Shimon owes Reuven money, why would Reuven want to sell him a field? Reuven should say, first pay me back. So the Gemara says like this. The Gemara explains and validates the Mishnah like this. Ba'asra, in a place, the Yav Zuze Bahade Kas Vishtara. When you buy a property, first you give over the money, right? And then they write the deed, the transfer of the loan documents. They sign the contract. So first, what would have happened that if indeed Shimon owed Reuven money, then Reuven, as soon as he got the money, before signing over the sale of the field, should have kept the money as payment for his loan. So Kuli Alma, nobody would argue the Motzi Amalei that Shimon could say, why didn't you keep the money for my loan? You should have kept the money when you sold me the field. And the fact that you went through and sold me the field proves that I never really owed you the money. That's what Shimon could say to Reuven. So nobody would disagree in that scenario. When is the machlokes ba'asre in a city First, they write the document. First, they write the transfer of the sale of the field, and then they give over the money. So then it's too late. I mean, you already transferred over the field, and you're just collecting the money as payment for the field. Nevertheless, Admin holds, you should have, if you felt that you were still owed money of the loan, you should have said to somebody that I don't want to, I'm selling him this field so I can collect my loan. I could foreclose on that field for the loan. And since you didn't tell anybody about that, is a proof that the guy never owed you the money anymore. It's just you're pulling out an old loan, but really he doesn't owe you the money. And therefore, the fact that you didn't notify anything that something is not right with the sale of the field proves that the loan is not really valid. Rabbanan Sabri, the Rabbanan hold that the loan is valid. Why? And the reason why you did not tell anybody that you want to foreclose on this field because you're afraid that the person will find out about it. Meaning Shimon is buying this field, right? And Shimon owes the money. And if Shimon knows that the whole reason why you're selling him this field is so that you can foreclose on him on this field because he owes you a loan. So Rabbanan Sabri, Rabbanan hold, the reason why you didn't tell anybody, because Chabra Islay. One friend has another friend, the Chabra Islay. And that friend has another friend. And eventually it will get back to the purchaser, to Shimon. So therefore, that's why you were very quiet about it. Shimon owed you Reuven money. Reuven was very silent about it, and Reuven sold Shimon a piece of property, and with the intention of that he was going to collect his loan by foreclosing on that property. So Rabbanan say that was the reason why Shimon sold him that field. So it doesn't invalidate the loan that he had. So Reuven still could collect on the loan that is owed by Shimon. New Mishnah. Shanayim shoitziya shtarchoiv zelzeh. You have two people who owe each other money, right? One guy borrowed $1 million, the other guy borrowed $1 million. So they both owe each other $1 million, right? And they both, now it's time of the payment at the same time. So, but one loan occurred after the other loan, right? So let's say one person, Reuven, loaned Shimon money in, let's say, January. And then Shimon lent Reuven money. Shimon lent Reuven money in March. Now, if it's like you're borrowing money from the person that borrowed from you. So Admin says that's the whole thing is strange. The whole thing is strange. The first person that says you owe me the money, we don't believe him because if it's true that I borrowed money earlier, Kate said, why are you borrowing from me? You should just call your loan in and get paid back from me. You don't need to borrow from me. So it proves that one of the loans, the earlier loan, is false. But Chachamim says, no. Chachamim say that each one should pay the $1 million back to the other guy. One guy, Shimon, should pay Reuven the $1 million that he borrowed, and Reuven should pay back Shimon the $1 million that he borrowed. That's what the Chachamim say. The Gemara is going to just now deal with that. Why do Chachamim say that each one should collect and pay back the other one's loan? Why can't they just keep the money because each one owes each other money and just cancel each other out? That's one question we'll deal with. But the other point of introduction is we know that a borrower when a lender collects on a loan, he can foreclose or collect from the middle properties. There are three types of properties. There's prime property, average property, and inferior property. Okay, prime property is if someone owes money, you don't foreclose on the prime property. You could only foreclose on the average property and not the inferior property. For nizakin, for damages, you can collect from idios, the prime property. For a balchoiv, or just a loan, then you collect from average property. And for a ksuba, you collect from inferior property. Albeit this is if the guy has no money to pay. So then you collect from the respective properties. So listen to this Gemara. Itma we learned. Each one, two people, pulled out a shtar choiv that each one borrowed from each other. So therefore, they both owe each other money. So, and it's the same amount. Rav Nachman Omer Zeh Goyve v'Zeh Goyve. Each one could collect what's on his star, and that's it. They collect their loan back. Rav Sheshes Omer, Rav Sheshes says, why do they have to collect their loan back? Hapuche mataroso lomeli. Why do they have to transfer the weight from one shoulder to the other shoulder? If you're carrying two knapsacks and they're both equal, what do you gain by transferring the one on the right side of your shoulder to the left side and the left one to the right side? They both weigh the same. What Rav Sheshes is saying is, why do they have to collect from each other? Just say, I'm keeping the money that I owe you because you owe me money too. Each one could hold on to what belongs to him. So now the Gemara says, the Kuli Alma, everybody agrees. Idis v'idis, benis v'zuburis ziburis. If both parties have no cash, they both have similar properties. Both parties that owe each other money, right? Reuben and Shimon, each one has a star that says you borrowed from me the same amount and I borrowed from you the same amount. So then, if they both have prime properties or average properties or inferior properties, so then Rav Sheshes is correct, because once one collects the property, the other is going to collect the same property back. It's just transferring the load from one side, the knapsack from one side to the other side. Ki pligi, when is the argument between Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes? This lechad beinonis. One has an average field, lechad ziburis, and one has an inferior field. So listen to this. Rav Nachman Saba, Rav Nachman holds, zeh goyve v'zeh goyve. It's best if each one does their own collecting. Why? Because Saba, he holds, when you determine to collect as a balchoiv, as a lender, that somebody owes you money, if you're collecting an average field, it's the average of that person's field. The average of that person's field. Bishaloi hein shaman. You reckon that it's his average field. So look what could happen, and somebody benefits. So also Baal Ziburis, the one that has the inferior field, if he collects first, and the other guy has an average field, the Gavi Leila Baininis, and he'll collect the Baininis field. So now, this Baininis, this average field that he collected for his loan, now he has two fields, a Baininis and a Ziburis. So now that Baininis turns into an Idis. That's his prime field. The Havagabe Idis, that's his prime field. So therefore, when the other guy is going to collect, he could only collect from the Ziburis. Vasahu b'shakal Ziburis. And the other person will collect from the inferior field. So it's a benefit if each one collects separately, especially if the Baal Ziburis collects first. Rav Sheshes Amar, Rav Sheshes says, Hatru apuche matarasa lomeli. He holds, why switch the bags back and forth? Because Kisavar, he holds, when a Baal Choiv collects, is bitchel kol odam hein shaman. You reckon, is it Baininis, what everybody would consider as an average field? Then you could still collect it, even though if it's for the person that you're collecting from, it's his best field. But if it's an average field, it's not a Park Avenue property, if it's an average place, so then you could collect it for your Baal Choiv. So he says, soif, ki asahu Baininis the nafshe koshakel. And so at the end of the day, he's going to collect back his Baininis, because when the Baal Baininis got his Baininis taken away from him, so when he comes collect from the Ziburis guy, now the Ziburis person has a Ziburis and a Baininis, he'll collect back his Baininis, because it's still an average field to the world. And that Rabbi Sheshes holds, that's how you reckon a Baininis field. If it's a Baininis to the world, you can still collect on it. So the Gemara asks one question. According to Rav Nachman, my chozes, why did you see fit to also Baal Ziburis Bereisha? This only works one-sided. According to Rav Nachman, the Baal Ziburis benefits only if he collected first. He collected the Baininis first. Then there's a benefit over here. But Leise Baal Baininis Bereisha, V'lig Be Ziburis, let the Baal Baininis collect first, then he has Ziburis by himself. He'll have Baininis and Ziburis, and then the Baal Ziburis will collect back his own Ziburis. In other words, according to Rav Nachman, if the Baal Baininis collected the Ziburis field first, And now the Ziburis wants to collect back. He's going to collect back his Ziburis field. So it's going to be an equal cancellation. So therefore, certainly, it's according to Rav Nachman, you would still say hapuchi matarasa lamali. Why go through this exercise? So the Gemara says lo tzrich. We know Rav Nachman is talking about the kodem tvoi. The first one that made a claim that he's owed money was the Baal Ziburas. So the Gemara says, but who cares if he made the claim first? Soif, at the end of the day, when they both come to Bezdin, the Baal Beininis pulls out a shtar choiv against the Baal Ziburas. He also they're coming at the same time. So in other words, who says that the Baal Ziburas should collect first, and then there's a benefit for the Baal Ziburas? Maybe the Baal Beininis should collect first, and then it's just an equal switch. Elo loit sricha, the Gemara says like this: the Islay, and this is the final understanding of the machloikis between Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes. We're talking about the Islay lechad idis v'beinis. One side, one guy, let's say one person has idis and beinis, a prime field and an average field. The Islay lechad ziburis, and the other side has just a inferior field, right? So now, which way you go, there's always a benefit for the Baal Ziburas. Mar Sova b'shaloi hein shaman. He's going to collect from his own. So if the Ziburas collects from the Beininis, if the Ziburas collects first from the Beininis, then he'll get a Beininis. And the guy with the idiot Beininis collects from the Ziburas, he'll only collect back as an inferior field. And if it starts the other way around, if the idiot Beininis collects first, so he'll collect the Ziburas, but the other person, according to Rav Nachman, will collect the Beininis, because that will be, now he has a prime Beininis and the Ziburas, he'll collect. So either way, whoever collects first, there's an advantage that you collect separately. But Rav Sheshes holds, Bishal Kol Odom Hein Shaman. No matter what, the Beininis goes back and forth, because he holds, we don't look at if it's your prime field or if it's an average. If it's an average field, no matter, it's your best field, but it's an average field, then any Baal Choiv could collect for it. And according to Rav Sheshes, it does not matter who collects first. And therefore, Rav Sheshes says, don't get involved. Let them all keep their what's owed, and they don't have to, transfer and then transfer back because of the loan. Okay, what you need to remember over here is this opinion. Rav Sheshes' opinion is that if two people have an equal loan and they both owe each other money, so you don't make each one pay each other back, just cancel the loan. You keep your money, I keep my money, and the loans are canceled. So now the Gemara is going to ask against Rav Sheshes. Our Mishnah has a similar case of Shnaim Shetziyah Shtar Choiv Zel Zeh, and the Chachamim say Zeh Goy V'Shtar Choiv Zeh Goy V'Shtar. They should transfer. They each should pay themselves back. That's the Gemara's question. Now we learned in our Mishnah the Chachamim Omer Zeh Goy V'Zeh Goy. Each one should collect. So how does that work? How do you resolve our Mishnah? Why, according to Rav Sheshes, you don't say each one should cancel each other out? Here, Gemara Rav Nachman Aliba the Rav Sheshes. Rav Nachman explained according to Rav Sheshes, one borrowed for 10 years and one borrowed for 5 years. In other words, when the other one borrowed, the loan of the other that he lent, when the second person borrowed the money, the loan that he lent was a 10-year loan. The loan, so therefore, that loan did not come due. Therefore, he had to borrow from the person that he lent from, and he borrowed it for 5 years. So the Gemara says, "Hey Chidami, what's the case? The first guy lent money for 10 years. The Sheni, and then the second guy lent it for 5 years. So therefore, then in this scenario, would Admin say, if it's true, your loan, if your loan is true, then why are you borrowing from me? There's a very good reason why he's borrowing from you. What is in there? He couldn't collect on the loan because he loaned you for 10 years and now he needs the money, so he's borrowing from you for 5 years. So that's why it doesn't say that, oh, he agreed that the loan was paid. No, he doesn't think that the loan was paid, but because the maturity date of that loan did not come due, that's why he's borrowing from you. So why would Admin say, no, the first loan is invalid? Ella, the opposite case. Rishon l'chamesh v'sheni l'eser. The first one was for 5 years, and the second one was for 10 years. So the Gemara says the first one was for 5 years, and the second one was for 10 years. So really, the first loan came due already. So why are you borrowing? Just collect on your loan. Hey, Chidami. So the Gemara says, if he could have collected on the loan, my time of the Rabbanan, why should the Rabbanan disagree with Adman? The fact that he didn't collect from his loan and he's borrowing from the person that he lent money, the guy owes you money. Why are you borrowing from him? So it must be he doesn't really owe you money. But if the maturity date is not yet there and you're borrowing prior to the maturity date, the maturity date didn't come. So my time at Adman, why should Adman say that the first loan is canceled? The reason why you didn't collect on the loan because you didn't reach the maturity date. And therefore you needed the money, so you borrowed from the person that you lent from. So the Gemara says a fascinating thing, and this is a very interesting way that the Gemara interprets our Mishnah. He comes on this day that the fifth day, it's a day before the maturity date. So Adman said, the fact that you borrowed the money, you could have waited a day and collect the loan. Why did you borrow? You just wait one more day and the maturity date comes. So Mar Savar, Adman held, a person would definitely push off a day and say, let me wait to the maturity date and then I'll collect on the loan. Why did he borrow prior to the maturity date if you only had to wait one more day? That's so something is fishy. That proves that something is fishy, that the first loan wasn't real loan. I mean, it must have been, he picked up an old document. But the Chachamim hold, sometimes a person needs the money and he can't even wait a day. Suppose he has a business transaction and the people that he's doing the business transaction are leaving tomorrow. So you need the money pronto. And therefore you left with no choice to borrow from the person that you lent to, even though the next day he owes you money from a previous loan. So that's why it's not fishy according to Rabbanan, and it doesn't invalidate the previous loan. That's one way to interpret the Mishnah. Now the Gemara is going to attempt to do another way and then say that's not a good way. Rabbi Bachama says, the reason why the Chachamim say that each one should collect from each other, and you don't say, just keep your money, don't collect from each other because you have the same loan, because we're talking about orphans. The Yasme Migvagovi, an orphan that's owed money, he can collect. If the orphan is a Baal Chayv, he's the lender. His father lent somebody money. The orphans could collect and foreclose on a property. But if they owe money, they're not responsible. Their properties cannot be foreclosed upon. They're orphans. We give them a dispensation. So therefore, that's why the Chacham said they should collect from each other. And of course, the orphans will be able to collect, but the other guy won't be able to collect from the orphans that their land. So the Gemara says, the Mishnah says they both should collect the loan from each other. So it's mashma. It's not talking about it implies that it's not talking about orphans because each one could collect. It should say one collects and one should be able to collect, but he can't. So that's what the Mishnah. That's what the Gemara answers. That's what the Mishnah means. That's you can't just squeeze that interpretation into the Mishnah. It says that each one is making a collection, so it cannot be dealing with Yisayim. Even if the Yisayim collected first, you could collect back from them. You could foreclose on the property of Yisayim. Like Bini Arbel Yasme, let the orphans collect first. And they should collect again from them. Rav Nachman, Rav Abahu, Yisayim should go b'karka b'choy v'saviyah. Orphans, after their father died, foreclosed on a property that their father was owed money, and they foreclosed on somebody's property. Now they have a brand new property in their portfolio. So then, so it's a brand new property. Then somebody who their father owed money to, that that debtor can foreclose on that property. So kasha, then makes it all the more difficult to interpret that our Mishnah is talking about that there's a Yisayim involved over here. Because still at the end of the day, at the end of the game over here, everyone is the same. So everyone will remain the same. So you don't have to make each other transfer properties. So that's not a good interpretation. So the Gemara asks one question. Let's say the Yisraelim have ziburis, the old inferior property. The other party has best, prime, and average. The Azli Yasmi Gavi Bainis. So the Yisraelim who will collect Baininis. Now the Yisraelim have Baininis and ziburis. Umad ziburis. And they would collect ziburis. Because we hold the Inami B'Shel Kol Adam Heim Shaman, even if you try to say, oh, but at the end of the day, they have an average property according to everybody's reckoning. Why wouldn't the other person get his baininess back? Don't we have a rule that even if you're foreclosing on orphans' properties, you could only foreclose on very inferior property? You can't collect a average property from a Yisayim. So the Gemara says, final, if this property wasn't in their portfolio prior, then you could only foreclose on inferior properties when you're collecting from your Simon. But if they got a brand new Baininus property into their portfolio, tafas, you're permitted to collect, you're permitted to foreclose even on that Baininus. So in that case, each one is going to get the Baininus back. So why should they go through this exercise? They should keep it. Anyway, the Gemara just remained with that first teretz of what we discussed before, that it was a guy who's ending a loan one day before it's due. Okay, we go now to to the end of the Masechta. We're dealing with back to Kesubos, and it's dealing with an argument between a husband and wife. New Mishnah. We know that let's say a man and woman are married. So the man decides that he says to his wife, I want to move to London, right? So then we don't force the wife. If she doesn't want to go, we cannot say that, oh, she loses her ksuba. You could give her a get and she lost her ksuba if she doesn't want to follow you. No, you can't force your wife to move out of the country that you're living in. So that's a good rule to know. Now, the Mishnah says like this: in Israel, there are three countries, basically. Shalosh aratzos l'nisuim. When regarding to marriages, even in Israel, there are three countries. It's broken down into three countries. Yehuda, the south of Israel, the Evar Yarden across the Jordan, the HaGalil in the north. So the Mishnah explains like this: Ein Moitziin, you can't force your wife to go from ear to ear, from a city. Let's say you live in Yehuda, you can't force your wife to move to Evar Yarden, even to another city, even if it's a city to a city move, a lateral move, but it's a different country. You can't force her to go from one town to another town, because even if it's a lateral move as a town to a town, but it's from one country to another country. It's from Yehuda to Evar Yarden or Evar Yarden to Galil. So you can't force your wife to move just because you want to move. But sometimes you could force your wife. If you live in the same country, let's say you live in Yehuda, you might see on the ear, you're allowed to force her to go from one city to another city, or mikrach lekrach, but from one town to another town. Since you're remaining in the same country, you're just moving from Lawrence to Cedarhurst or something like that, or from one town to another town, that you can force your wife to move with you. And if she does not want to move with you, then you have a right to divorce her, and she loses her ksuba. The wife has to follow the husband. Now we go to Amud Beis. The Mishnah says that you can't force your wife, if you live in a city, to move to a town. Let's say you live in New York City, you can't force her to move to a town, to the suburbs. If you live in the suburbs, you can't force your wife to live in the city. And the Gemara is going to explain why not. It would seem that city living is better because you have anything at your fingertips. So the Gemara is going to explain another reason. So the Gemara might see him menava haral and nava hayafa. Even if it's a lateral move, you could only move from a bad neighborhood to a good neighborhood. That's permitted. If it's a city to a city move, let's say you're moving from the Upper East Side to the Upper West Side. So it's a lateral move. It's the same neighborhood. Or if you're moving from Harlem to the Upper West Side, that's permitted. It's from a nova ra, from a bad neighborhood to a good neighborhood, but as long as you're in the same city. Even if you're living in the same city, but you're moving from a good neighborhood to a bad neighborhood, even if it's the same city, that you can't force your wife. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel Oimer, Rab Shimon ben Gamliel has an interesting thing. He said, Af minova ra linova yafa. You can't force your wife to go from a bad neighborhood to a good neighborhood, even in the same city. Why? You're going from a bad to a good. So Gemara says, because when you go from a beautiful neighborhood, it tests your immune system, basically. And therefore, maybe you're so used to living in a bad neighborhood, when you go to a new neighborhood, even though it's best, it tests your immune system. It's almost like the old men, an old couple that they lived all their life in one apartment, and then the kids moved them into this brand new apartment with all the space that they never had in their life, and all of a sudden the guy gets sick. That's the way it is, Rab Shimon Gamliel. When you move to a change of a location, tests your immune system. So the Gemara just wants to understand. Bishlam, I understand very well, mikrach le'ir, if you're going from a town to a city, so therefore the bekrach shchichi. So the Gemara says the bekrach shchichi kol mili, in a town you have everything, but here lo shchichi kol mili. In other words, just the opposite. In the town you have anything you want because you're right near the fields and everything like that. In a city you don't have anything that you want. So therefore, I understand that it's a bad move from a krach to an ear. Elami ear la krach. My tamo. Why can't they move from a city to a town? Isn't that better? So the answer is it's not always better. Messiah Rabbi Yossi Bachanina, the Amar Rabbi Yossi Bachanina, Minayin Shivas Krak and Kosha, Shnema Yivarchu Ham L'chol Nishim Stadrum Shabbos B'Yerushalayim. So he blessed anybody who wants to go, who was going up to Yerushalayim, because the way, let me just explain it in different terms. An ear is considered to be a town. A krach is a big city. So the Gemara says, I understand why a person would want to move from a town, from a big city to a town. That's a downgrade, because once you go to a town, you don't have everything that you need. But why isn't it considered an upgrade when you move from a town to a big city? What's wrong with living in a big city? So on this, Rabbi Yossi Bachanina said that living in a big city, Krachim is a big city, like in New York City, kosher is very difficult. That they gave a special blessing of all the people that chose to live in Jerusalem, and that's a pasuk in Tehillim. Because who would want to live in Jerusalem? It's so crowded and cramped in together. And therefore, and there's no, Rashi says, Hakol misyashvim sham v'doichkim u'makarven abatim zel lezeh v'ein sham avir. There's no airspace. Avo be'ir, but in a town, let's say in a suburb, yesh ginis u'pardesim smuchim abatim. Everybody has their front lawn, the backyard, v'avir and yafa, and the air is good. So that's why we explain that each one has its advantages. To live in a big city, you have everything you want. But to live in a town is better, a suburb, because you have backyards and everything and more space. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel Oimar, once you make a change in your living habits, your immune system is tested. My boidik, what does it mean your immune system is tested? Like Shmuel said, when you change your location, that tests your intestines, you get sick. Once you change your habits, that could cause your stomach to become upset. Koser b'sefer Ben Sira. Ben Sira wrote, is like a Musa sefer. It says in there, Kol Yemei Oni Roim. In Mishlei it says, every day of a poor person is bad. So the Gemara learns that it's just the daytime is bad for an Oni because he eats coarse bread. So the Gemara says, V'ika Shabbos v'Yom Tovim. But doesn't an Oni, a poor person, have a good meal on Shabbos and Yom Tov? So why does it say every single day of a poor person is bad? Shabbos and Yom Tov, he gets good food. And says the Gemara, it's because he eats bad food all the week. Shabbos and Yom Tov, the food is even harder on him. Kiddush Shmuel, the Alma Shmuel said, the changing of your eating habits begins with the sicknesses in the stomach. Ben Sira says not only are the days of a poor person bad, but even the night times. Af leilois, even the night of a poor person is bad. Why? B'shefel Gaga and Gaga. He lives in the lowest part of the city, so everybody's rain rolls right onto his roof. Uvemroim Harim Karmoi, and the top of the mountain is that's where he could plant his vineyard. So of course he plants on top of the vineyard, so all his topsoil runs down to other people's vineyards. Mimtar Ganem Lagagoi, from the other rains of the other roofs fall onto his roof, and the soil that's in his vineyard fall to lakram, to other people kramim. So being poor is not only a bad during the daytime and nighttime. It ain't good to be poor. So now we'll just do the Mishnah and then we'll stop. Another minute. Again, we're talking about husband and wife, and they can force, and we said that the husband can force the wife to move with him sometimes, and sometimes he can't. But hakol, both men and women, Malin Eretz Israel, can force each other to move to Israel. In other words, a husband can force the wife, if you don't move with me to Israel, then I can divorce you and you lose your ksuba. And if she wants to move to Israel and he doesn't want, she can force him to give her a get and pay a ksuba. So they both have a right to move to Israel. They ain't hakol mitziim, but they don't have a right to take you out of Israel. So if one of them wants to leave Israel and the other one doesn't, then the other one wins the case. Hakol malin Yerushalayim. And here we're talking about Yerushalayim is something different. Everyone could force their husband or their wife to live in Jerusalem. They ain't hakol mitziim, but they don't have the right to pull you out of Yerushalayim. So therefore, if you can't force the issue if you want to leave Jerusalem. And this was said, echad anashim ve'echad anashim. Whether a man wants to live in Israel or Jerusalem, he can force his wife. And if the wife wants to live in Israel or Jerusalem, she can force the husband. That's the first discussion in the Mishnah. And now just one more last discussion in the Mishnah is how do you determine what currency you should pay the ksuba? So for example, we know that the Canadian dollar and the American dollar are both dollars, but they're worth differently. So the Gemara says, the Mishnah says like this: Nasa isha be'eretz Yisrael. You married a woman in Israel, and you committed your responsibility of ksuba in Israel. The gerusha be'eretz Yisrael, and the divorce it was in Israel. Of course, noitzim loim mois eretz Yisrael. You give the currency of eretz Yisrael when you pay the ksuba. Nasa isha be'eretz Yisrael. But if you married a woman in Israel, the gersha bekaputkia, and you divorced her, let's say in Cyprus. So then, since the responsibility came in Israel, where you married her, that's where the wedding took place. When you pay the ksuba, you give the money of Israel money. But nasa isha bekaputkia, the gersha be'eretz Yisrael. So here you married the woman and you took on the responsibility in Cyprus, but the divorce occurred in Israel. So you would think that you should pay the currency of Cyprus, which is a much more valuable currency than the currency of Israel when you pay the ksuba. So here we go eat light on the guy. We say you still only pay the money of Israel. You don't, even though you took on the responsibility in Kaputkia, but you pay the currency of Israel. And one more thing, Rab Shimon ben Gamliel disagrees. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, no, you pay, when you pay ksuba, you have to give kaputkia money, because that's where the wedding took place. And wherever the wedding took place, that's where the currency to pay the ksuba has to come from. And also yisha bekaputkia, vegersha bekaputkia. This is obvious. You married a woman in kaputkia and your divorce happened in kaputkia. Of course, the currency that you pay the ksuba is kaputkia money. Okay.